I know quitting has a bad reputation. No one wants to be called a quitter. People hear the word and immediately think weakness or lack of discipline. So sometimes we hang on at all costs, even when staying does nothing but delay the projects we really should be working on. Looking back, I now see that quitting was an indispensable part of the success I achieved. I didn't realize it when it was happening, but I basically walked away from everything I ever started before finally finishing. It wasn't a strategy, though. It was just me being me. But every time I stepped away, other important things came into focus. Hey, I'm Don. I started 60 Someday for young men in their teens, 20s, and 30s who want to live their best life. The version that includes reversals, exits, mistakes, failures, and long stretches where progress only becomes obvious later. In this video, I'm going to walk through 4 decisions to quit that actually shaped my life's journey. The first was leaving high school before graduating. The second was stepping away from my undergraduate degree, again before graduating. The third was stopping my MBA program after 1 semester. And then eventually, I walked away from the company I founded after 7 years. Together, these 4 exits form a pattern. By the end of this video, you should see how quitting can be a practical tool for repositioning rather than a verdict on your character. Each decision to quit shifted my leverage. And the final one moved me from owning 6 2/3% of a company I helped to build to owning 85% of the company that replaced it. That outcome followed directly from my willingness to exit when the structure no longer worked for me. Let's start with my decision to leave high school before graduating, because this pattern began long before I was even thinking about business strategy. I was kind of a strange kid in high school in that I was all about sports and all about art, which is not a common combination, but not so much about grades. So for some reason, I just didn't feel the relevance. I was the kind of kid who would skip class not to go to the smoking area, but to go read books that I really was interested in the library rather than the books that were being assigned to me. So of course, you don't get grades for participating in music and sports. And by the end, it was obvious I was not going to have enough credits to graduate. So I left, and what I did was I worked in a factory. I did the poor kids version of the gap year, and I really loved it. The factory experience was actually fantastic, but I came back with a renewed sense of purpose and really finally poured it on in terms of my academics and got into the university program that I wanted to. Okay, now let me take you back to my second big quit. This time quitting was forced on me by the school administration because I had already quit in my mind. So I had done a year at the University of Toronto, and then I transferred to McGill University, a great school, but I was feeling like I should probably do something like be a lawyer when I graduate. Maybe that would align with my skills and be something that pays fairly well. And that meant taking political science, which it turns out I hated and had no enthusiasm for. So eventually I failed a class and then failed a second class, and then the school administration asked me to leave. So that quitting was forced upon me. But it was forced upon me because I had already quit in my mind. I was no longer committed to the hard work that it would take to get this degree. So what did I do when I quit? I joined a band and toured around bars all throughout the province of Ontario and the Maritime provinces, actually. And I got married and had a child. But I always had it in my mind that I would go back. Even though people always tell you, don't quit school because you'll never go back. I kind of knew that I would go back, and eventually I did. But again, I went back with more purpose. I took the subjects that I was really interested in, which turned out to be English and philosophy. And that set me up for the next stage in a way that grinding it out in political science never would have. The third time I quit was when I was in that MBA program. So I thought, I'll take my English and philosophy degree and then layer on top of that a very practical business degree. So I found a school that made sense for me. I went there, but I didn't know anyone in the class. And entering a graduate program is tough if you don't have a support network around you. So it came time for the first set of exams, and I realized I don't know anything about statistics, even though I've been in the class, and I don't have anyone to talk to say, hey, what do we do here? Or what should we focus on? So I did really poorly on the exam and I left. So again, You think, well, once you leave, you'll never go back. But I did actually go back. A year later, I decided that I need to be in a program that emphasizes strong peer support. So I found that program at the University of Toronto, where they actually do an orientation weekend where you come in with all the other people like you who don't know anybody else, and you get to meet each other and look at the path forward. And that made all the difference. The problem was I was in the wrong program the first time. Quitting actually allowed me to get to the right program. The fourth example of the art of quitting was really the decision that changed everything for me, because it involved walking away from something that I had helped build, a company that I had done everything from design the logo for to do all the sales, all the operations. But I only owned 6 2/3% of that company because I was a guy that had no money. So I had to bring in a lot of investors, and I was okay with that when I had a lot of control. But at one point we brought in an investor who had real ideas about what I should do. And it turns out I wasn't so interested in someone else's input. I kind of disagreed with everything this guy had to say. So I was 41 at the time, and I thought, you know what? It's time for me to have a midlife crisis. I'm going to walk away. If they will pay me my employment contract, I'll take that money and I'll start a new chapter of my life. But they didn't see it that way. In fact, the guy who had all the bright ideas was offended that I was leaving. He was a rich guy. I was really not a rich guy. And he had what I call hot girl syndrome. Hot girl syndrome is, if someone's going to break up in this relationship, I'm going to break up with you. I'll tell you when it's over. You don't come to me telling me you're going to break up. You should just be thankful that I want to be with you. So what he did was come to me with an offer, which is to say, I'm going to pay you 20% of your employment contract and you can go. But if you want to challenge me on that, I'm actually going to terminate you and give you nothing. So I got right away that if he terminated me, I suddenly had rights. Because before that, I was just a guy who was quitting and asking for a favor, which was for them to pay out my employment contract. So I said, you know what? I'll take the termination, no problem. I signed that letter, went right to a lawyer, sued my previous company, got a lot of money, and enough money to go back into the very same business. And through our discussions, I was able to negotiate down my non-compete, so that by the time I signed the deal, I was actually free to go right back into the business, which I did, put my old company out of business, and now I owned 85% instead of 6 2/3. But that never would have happened except that I decided to quit and have a midlife crisis. Now, I have to add one thing here in conclusion. Everything I quit, I eventually went back to. I eventually finished high school. I eventually finished my BA. And I eventually finished my MBA. And I'm still the owner and president of the company that directly replaced the one I walked away from. I guess that makes me both a quitter and a finisher. But each time, the quitting wasn't a mistake I had to go back and fix, but an indispensable part of getting to a better place than the situation I walked away from. So I get it. Sometimes you're Mark Zuckerberg, and the right path is to quit Harvard, start Facebook, and never go back to school. But sometimes you're me, and maybe you, and you're actually on the right path, but what you need is a pause. So to wrap this up, I have to say that I'd feel bad if you watched this video and your takeaway was to start looking around for things you could quit. What I want is for you to maybe re-examine the times you quit in the past and consider the possibility that this thing you see as a failure, or that maybe other people are trying to tell you was a failure, was really just a reset. And if your instincts are telling you that quitting is in your future and you're afraid of what might happen, I hope I can help you see a different set of possibilities. But as always, I never pretend to have all the answers for all the people, or even any answers for any of the people. Maybe the thing you're meant to learn from my experience is to do everything the opposite of what I did. I'm very cool with that. Oh, and if you want to hear more of what not to do in your life, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and you'll get more. Thanks for taking some time with me today.